The man gripped a weapon, pointing it directly at my wife. She didn't blink or even flinch. Instead, she lifted one eyebrow and calmly asked, "Are you sure you want to do this, officer?" Little did he know, standing before him wasn't just any woman. She was Detective Alexis Foster, and he had just made one of the worst decisions of his entire career. The trouble had started innocently enough with something as trivial as a mailbox. A small, almost comically official notice, bright red and hastily taped to the door, demanding that we repaint our mailbox to a specific shade within 3 days. Failure to comply could result in further action, it read in bold. There was no contact number, just a stamp that said Pine Brook Homeowners Compliance Board in an overly dramatic font. It looked more like something from a bad movie about neighborhood drama. We had just moved in, still surrounded by boxes, and I had only managed to mow the lawn. "They don't like our mailbox," I muttered as I stared at the note, feeling a little unsure if this was some kind of joke or an actual threat. Alexis, ever the skeptic, skimmed the paper and gave me a look that could only be described as amused disbelief. "What's this HOA regulation for? We just moved in," she asked, tossing the paper aside. At first, I tried to ignore it. That is, until another letter arrived a couple of days later, this one a bit more serious. Parking violation. Fines apply. Non-compliance may result in escalated enforcement. I raised an eyebrow, staring at the letter. Our car was parked right in front of the house, nowhere near blocking anything. Are we living in a gated community we didn't know about? I joked, but Alexis didn't laugh. She was already pulling up the real estate papers on her laptop, methodically checking the fine print. She leaned back and glanced up. "This house doesn't have an HOA," she confirmed. "No restrictions, no compliance group, nothing." Then who are these people? I wondered aloud. That's when we began to suspect something more sinister. The next morning, I saw a man across the street snapping photos of our garage. He had a badge and a radio, but his boots were too clean and his gear looked brand new, like something from a costume shop. He made his way over, chest puffed out like a bad cop from a low-budget TV show. "I'm Officer Davis with the Pine Brook Compliance Team," he said. I smiled awkwardly. Didn't know we had a compliance team. He handed me a laminated badge, which I barely glanced at before noticing the expiration date. It had expired years ago. "We handle compliance issues," he explained. "Community harmony, and you've already violated a few regulations." I chuckled. "You need a warrant for that inspection," I said, "or maybe a time machine to fix your expired badge." He jotted something down on a notepad and left without another word. That was the moment Alexis went into full investigative mode. After cross-referencing local land use and deeds, she confirmed that the Pine Brook Compliance Team didn't exist. No filings, no registration, nothing. "This is a scam," she said, her voice low. I couldn't argue. It was a scheme to intimidate residents and extract money under false pretenses. Alexis quickly devised a plan. She had the look in her eyes, the one I'd seen during her years as a detective, strategic, calculating, and utterly fearless. "We'll make them think we're just ordinary residents," she said. "You get the cameras, I'll take the notes." By the end of the day, 4 motion detecting cameras were set up. One by the garage, another by the mailbox, one facing the driveway, and a 4th cleverly hidden in a porch lantern. The following days, the violations continued to pile up. Each letter was more absurd than the last. It wasn't long before Officer Davis showed up again, camera in hand, trying to measure the distance between our hedges and the curb. When he left, another notice was on the door. "Final warning for non-compliant landscaping." This time, Alexis froze the footage. The badge on Officer Davis's chest wasn't just a cheap knockoff. It was an imitation of an actual sheriff's badge from the county. And that wasn't the worst part. They're pretending to be law enforcement. Alexis said, her voice calm but deadly serious. "That's felony-level impersonation." She immediately reported the incident, and we began compiling everything into a secure archive. The next day, a new officer arrived, another man trying to take pictures of our backyard through the fence. That's when we realized this wasn't a few rogue neighbors. It was a coordinated effort to extort and manipulate the entire community. "This is organized," Alexis said, adding to the list of violations they'd manufactured. They were trying to create the illusion of authority, and they were using it to shake down the neighborhood. Eventually, the fake compliance board showed up at the community center with cones and clipboards, attempting to inspect our home like it was some sort of criminal investigation. But Alexis wasn't fooled. She knew the game they were playing. She stood tall, arms crossed, and asked one of them, "Who gave you the authority to do this?" The response was the same as before. "We enforce the rules here." But when Alexis pointed out the fraudulent badge and questioned their legitimacy, everything changed. The room fell silent as the truth settled in. This wasn't just about violating law and regulations. These people had been impersonating law enforcement and collecting money under false pretenses. And that's when Alexis dropped the bombshell. "This operation is over." She handed out copies of the evidence to the shocked onlookers and revealed that the man behind this whole operation was none other than the board's president, who had funneled over $30,000 from the illegal fines into his personal accounts. He and his group had planned to expand their fake HOA to other neighborhoods, using the same tactics to keep residents in fear. "This ends today," Alexis declared, and it did. Within weeks, everyone involved in the scam was arrested. The real deputies showed up, and the operation that had terrorized the neighborhood for so long was finally put to rest. We walked out of that meeting feeling victorious. Neighbors who had once been too afraid to speak up were now sharing their stories, and slowly, the fear that had gripped the community started to fade. A few weeks later, Alexis was recognized for her role in shutting down the fraud, and some of the neighbors even started calling her sheriff of the suburbs as a joke. But it wasn't just a nickname. It was a reminder that sometimes the quietest places have the strongest protectors. And that was the most satisfying revenge of all. As the dust settled and the truth came to light, the neighborhood of Pinebrook slowly began to heal from the fear that had once gripped it. What began as a small-scale scam designed to intimidate and extort had unraveled in spectacular fashion, thanks to one determined individual, Alexis Foster. Her quiet resolve and sharp mind had turned the tables on the criminals who had tried to mask their fraudulent operation with fake badges and false authority. But it wasn't just the takedown of the perpetrators that marked a turning point. It was the transformation of the community itself. The residents of Pinebrook, once cowering behind closed doors, found their voices. They began to speak up, share their stories, and take control of their own neighborhood. In a place where compliance had once been a tool for exploitation, it was now a symbol of unity and strength. The story of Pinebrook became a legend, not just because of the justice that was served, but because of the quiet power of one woman who refused to let injustice stand. Alexis's actions sent a message far beyond the confines of our small town, one that rippled through communities everywhere. Don't let fear control you, and always question the authority that seeks to oppress. As the neighborhood began to celebrate its newfound freedom, Alexis remained as composed as ever. She wasn't one to seek the spotlight. For her, the satisfaction came not from accolades, but from knowing she had restored peace and integrity to a place that had been manipulated for far too long. Pinebrook was no longer just a neighborhood. It was a community reborn, one where trust and fairness once again reigned supreme. And for Alexis, that was the ultimate victory.